Welcome to the Not-for-Profit Podcast. My name is Matt Williams. Today we are talking to Rosie Kendall. Rosie is from Christians Against Poverty Australia, or CAP Australia. We talk to Rosie about three main things that affects poverty or people in financial crisis in Australia, and how they get out of that, and what CAP does to enable that. The first thing we talked about is common factors. Is there any common factors amongst the people that they help, and how is that determined where they've got to now? So we delve into that and look at is there any common factors so that it becomes obvious that they're getting into strife. We then have a chat to Rosie about why are people getting into that financial need, what the circumstances are, how that leads to it, and what's behind that. So we talked to Rosie about, is there, again, a common factor about how they get to that financial position? And we look at why and how and when and where, and hopefully this will help some people out there. And the third factor we talked to about Rosie is about the help they CAP provide, is that reaching out. It's reaching out. That's the hardest step. So once people reach out to CAP Australia and get that help, they know they're not alone. And that's the key factor of this podcast, and also CAP Australia. What they do is to let people know that there is help out there. So reaching out is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of, I need a little bit of help and help get back on my feet. So let's have a quick chat to Rosie and see what all the good things are happening around CAP Australia. The Not-for-Profit Podcast is brought to you by Platinum Audits for all your auditing needs. If you need any audits done or you need any information, please contact Platinum Audits. Welcome to the Not-for-Profit Podcast. My name is Matt Williams, your host. This week we're talking to Rosie Kendall, CEO of Christians Against Poverty Australia. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Rosie, how are you going?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for having me, Matt.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show. I just wanted to start with a very quick question of you. What is CAP, or what's known as CAP, Christians Against Christians Against Poverty, and how did it start? How did it get up and running?
Yeah, so a couple of questions to answer there. So it was launched or birthed in the UK in '96. Yeah, been around a little while, but not forever. In the year 2000, it was launched here in Australia from CAP UK. Christians Against Poverty partners with churches to help people in overwhelming debt. It also helps resource the church to provide a course that we call the CAP Money course to help people achieve financial well-being. And we do both of those things with a primary goal to help people, but to empower and equip the church to do something practical and to help people that are stuck in a cycle of overwhelming debt that often traps people in poverty. Here in Australia, debt is a major cause of poverty, and for us to be able to provide a tool for the church to help people practically is really powerful.
Yeah, awesome. I must say I've actually read the book from the founder. It was a very, very inspirational book, and I believe when he started it here in Australia, he ran a marathon every day. I think it was for a month or something. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, it wasn't when CAP first began here, but I think that CAP had been going maybe 15 years in the UK, and to celebrate and to help funds for the kind of global movement, and he decided to run 15 marathons in 15 days across, at the time, the three nations that CAP was running in. So he did 5 marathons in the UK. He got on a flight. He arrived here in Australia. He did 5 marathons here in Australia, got on a flight, went to New Zealand, did 5 marathons. So in 15 days, 5 marathons in 3 countries. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's a commitment for you, I must say. But from what I read, it was very successful and certainly helped the company along and the entity along in raising awareness and funds as well.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, it was a good while ago now, but it provided certainly quite a bit of I suppose financial breakthrough from the early days for CAP UK and CAP Australia and CAP New Zealand, just to break through from a situation, kind of quite poor cash flow, and just gave us an injection to really be able to grow the ministries in all three countries. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I've run a half marathon, so I know exactly how hard that will be. So my hat off to him.
Mm.
How did you get involved with CAP here in Australia? And did you get involved in the base level and then work your way up, or did you come in as CEO? What was your role to start with?
Yeah, so I mean, you'll tell from my accent that I'm not Australian by birth. So
Yep.
I actually joined CAP UK, what would be 12 and a half years ago now. So I was just very nearly 24 at the time. Kind of, you can do your maths, you can work out how old I am now. And yeah, I joined the organisation CAP UK because I had a strong heart for the church and seeing the church do something practically. And I suppose just I actually met John Kirkby, who we were just talking about, the founder, and his vision, and just meeting him was really compelling. And I wanted to join the organisation. I think I remember saying to him and the CEO at CAP UK at the time, I'm happy to come and wash your floors if you want me to, kind of anything that might be helpful to you. I want to be part of building this vision. And so at the time, they had actually just at a point of quite big expansion, and they were 10 years into their story. So that was in 97. Sorry, they launched in 96. So this was in 2006. And yeah, at that point, I came into the organisation and really helped. Or the first job that I had was overseeing some of their church partnerships and training people to be in the community and do the face-to-face work that is Christians Against Poverty. So collecting information, sending that up to head office, and probably over the span of the next 6 years, really did lots of different jobs in the organisation. The organisation was still relatively small, and for those listening that are in not-for-profit situations, you'll know that you get to experience and do lots of things, a big breadth of things, and really was there for a massive expansion in the UK. So when I joined in 2007, they only had 50 debt centres. 6 years later, there was over 200. And so I suppose I had just a real privilege of being around over some big expansion and had a lot of experience over lots of different areas and parts of the charity. And so in, it would have been 2013, I just returned to work after having my first child. She was about 10 months, and came back to work. My plan was that I would come back to work. By this point, I'd got a job that I was comfortable in and very happy with. Work allowed me to come back part-time. And yeah, my plan was to come back, do a job, maybe have another baby at some point. And John Kirkby, who again is a troublemaker, got me in an office and said, how would you like to go to CAP Australia? There's a bit of a gap over there with the skill set and the experience that you've got from CAP UK. We think would be really beneficial to the team over there. And I remember sitting in the office and saying, there is no way that I want to do that. I've got a 10-month-old baby. I've just come back to work. I don't really want to go over the other side of the world right now. Can you ask me in 5 years' time? Or anyway, but I did say to him, if God asked me to go, then I'll go. And so that's what me and my husband went away from that conversation and did. We prayed and really tried to seek guidance on whether this was something that we felt called to do. And over a very quick, short period, it felt very clear that it was the right thing to do. And so within around 4 months, after a very ridiculously quick visa application and being approved, we were here in Australia by September 2013. And so again, joined the team here in Australia, doing a job overseeing the partnerships here in Australia, and have done various different things in the organisation. And in 2017, so just 2 years ago, I became the CEO here in Australia.
Wow. So you have seen the depth and the breadth of the whole organisation then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose being involved in every aspect of whether it be client delivery and how do we make sure that our service outcomes are being achieved, to working with churches and their partnerships, but then the massive machine that is fundraising and making sure that we're raising the dollars that we need to provide the service and the partnership with churches that we're so passionate about.
Ah, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah. So in those roles and in the positions you've held across the board for UK and Australia, I would imagine that you've seen pretty much a common denominator, a common factor amongst who CAP aim to help. What would be the biggest factor you see that gets people to where they are, or how they get out of that? What's the final breaking point, or is there one factor area, or is it multiple things on top of each other?
Yeah, I mean it's always multi-layer, so never normally easy to pinpoint the one thing that is the primary cause or the defining factor. But I suppose that in itself is the common denominator, that there's for the clients that we see, they're normally vulnerable of some description. So they're normally marginalised for some reason. They're socially isolated. Maybe they're going through a mental ill health problem. Maybe they're on a low income. There's various kind of factors that contribute to vulnerability, but most of our clients would be vulnerable kind of pre and post their debt situation, and then a crisis happens. And so maybe they're living on a low income and things were tight, but then something happens that tips them over the edge or changes their situation. So they've lost a job, they've had a death in the family, and they've got to pay for a funeral. A story that we're actually sharing at the moment, the lady, she had a car crash and she wasn't fully insured, and so there was kind of a gap between the insurance payout and some of the repairs that needed to be done. And so she saw the only way to get out of that situation was to get a loan out, and she couldn't afford that loan and therefore spiraled out of control. And so it's normally that point of crisis that is the tipping point. And we pride ourselves on our service, that's really who we're designed to help. We're designed to go in at that point of crisis, and to know that at that point they're normally kind of out of control with their financial situation. They don't know what's going on, and normally mental health is kind of trapping them in not really wanting and knowing how to deal with it. And so we just handhold them one step at a time. Let's look at the situation. There is a solution. Let's look at how much money you've got coming in. Let's look at how many debts you've got. We take that paperwork, we do some debt negotiation, we call their creditors, we get interest and charges stopped, we put a solution together, and then we're able to support those clients out of debt. So the charity, sees lots of people getting out of debt on an annual basis, and over 3,000 families have gone debt free here in Australia since CAP began just 19 years ago.
Wow, that's an amazing figure. Unfortunately, I think the figure would be 4 or 5 times that are still in debt and still struggling on a daily basis. Don't know the figures off the top of my head. You probably know more than I would. Is there obviously there's a lot of need for it out there, but is there a big gap between who we help and who you've helped and who hasn't been helped yet?
Yeah, absolutely, a massive gap, and the need is huge, and actually quite hard to assess who is kind of struggling that may not be accessing help yet.
Yeah.
Often the problem of debt is quite hidden and normally only becomes apparent when people start to miss payments and get behind and fall into arrears payments. And for us, we kind of overwhelmed sometimes by the amount of calls that we get seeking help, and we're not yet at national coverage. We're not yet at the size that we would like to be, and so we have the unfortunate thing at the moment of people will call us from an area that we don't yet have a church partner with us to provide debt help, and we have to turn them away or signpost them to someone else, and that's why it's so important that for me and my role, that I am pushing to raise more money, that I am making sure that the message is getting out there to churches, that there is something they can do for the people in their community, that there is a bridge that they can build from their church community into the community, so that we don't have to turn anyone away. I think that the figure this year, we're up to around 600 calls, families, individuals that would represent that we haven't been able to help for some reason. Either they're from an area we have a centre but we haven't got capacity to help them, or they're from an area that we're not able to help them because there isn't a service in their area yet.
Yeah, I love the yet, because that's the focus of I know that's the focus of the business, to actually help every single person who has a financial situation to get out of that financial situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the drive, that's why we keep on doing what we do and striving to be able to help more people, because with every passing year, there's more and more people that are struggling.
It's run through the church, but it's not just for church goers. It's for everyone in the community, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's run by the church, and we see the church as an amazing resource and a place that is full of amazing people that are ready for community. Church is a very unique place in that all these people gather and they have friendships and they're ready to support people. And CAP is for anyone we help. It doesn't matter what people's religious views are or their whatever, we help everyone. And so, but the church is the ones that provide the service or the face-to-face part of our service.
Yeah. If somebody's out there who's listening to that, does that cost anything for the actual participant in that? Like if they reach out, is it a financial cost to them at all?
No, so for our clients, it's completely free. It's and that's a really important thing. Actually, there are other organisations that provide similar things to us in terms of debt management and supporting people over the long haul with a debt management plan. But most of them would charge for that service, and ours is completely free. Obviously, the clients that we're serving don't have money to be paying a percentage of money to a debt. And also some of that going to an external kind of company or a for-profit organisation. And so, yeah, it's absolutely free.
That's awesome. That's why I want to ask that question, because I know there are others out there that they do charge a percentage or a monthly fee or anything like that. But yeah, my understanding was CAP was free to the person who's in need, and supported through the church. Hence the reason you do all the fundraising.
Yeah.
From success stories, for people reaching out, I know that. Not through personal experience, but I know through other experiences, through people seeing people, reaching out is probably the hardest step, because it's asking for assistance where sometimes it's not. What benefits do people get from that? Like when people are debt free, it might take 8 months, 18 months, whatever it is. What's the feeling they get from that, and what's the outcome from that?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The reaching out for help is the hardest step. We have people answering those phone, a helpline and those phone calls. And one of the things that we try and do is when that phone call comes is to just tell them how well they've done to make that first step of asking for help. And so, people at that point feel hopeless. They often have been confused about where to go for help. And most of them are calling with a vague hope that we might be able to help, but not sure that we can. And so when we're able to say, it doesn't matter how bad the situation is, we will be able to help, and that we make them an appointment, someone will go and see them in their own home. It actually always astounds me that when I talk to clients and ask them about their story, if I meet someone, often I will meet them at the point maybe when they've become debt free, and I'll ask them about their story, and I'll expect them to be telling me how great it feels to be debt free, and that debt free moment is awesome. And although it's a significant milestone, it's actually that point where someone said, I'm with you and I can help you, on that first phone call or the first visit that they had, because they've gone from feeling isolated and alone to, I now know that I've got help and I'm making a step towards coming out of my situation, which is really significant.
Yeah, well, I from the observation and history that I've seen from CAP, I thought it would have been the debt-free, not the first initial phone call. So that's actually quite surprising, but at the same time not, because people don't want to be alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you actually unpack it, you realise that what people are burdened with is the debt and not knowing what they're meant to be doing. So they've got creditors calling them and they don't have they don't have enough money to pay the different bills and things that they have. And so very quickly after coming to us, actually they've got a budget, their creditors are being communicated to, and so they don't have the pressure and burden that they had pre-calling us. And so although going debt-free is a milestone and it is something to be celebrated that they're really pleased about, actually they've not been waking up worrying about their money. They've not been worried about paying a bill because they've had a red notice come through their mail for years. And so it is often those first few months where the transformation for them really happens.
Oh, that's awesome. If somebody's listening and they want to reach out to, how's the best to contact CAP and the team and get support? Is it there a central number or is it through the church? What's the best way to get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, so if someone's listening to this and they themselves are in overwhelming debt, the best thing to do is to call us. We have a helpline number, and that number is 1300 227 000. If you're listening to this and you think there's things that you can help, maybe you're in a church and you think, oh, maybe my church could be involved, or you think, oh, maybe I could provide some financial resources and get involved in helping us grow and help more people, then the best way to do that is just to get onto our website, which is www.capost.org.
Excellent. Thanks for that. All those details will be in the show notes for those listening. So if you need those, that's the best place to go and get them. Rosie, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on the show today and just sharing your insights and what CAP does and the solutions they provide for people out there. So thank you very much for your time today.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Cheers, and we'll talk again soon.